On a quiet morning in Waipahu, Hawaii, January 13, 2022, Lilly Tokuhara felt a growing sense of unease. Her son Jon, a well-known and deeply respected acupuncturist in the community, hadn't answered his phone since the night before. Jon was never one to miss a call, especially from his mother. As the hours ticked by, worry turned to dread, and Lilly decided she had to see for herself if everything was all right. She arrived at his small clinic, a familiar place usually filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the soothing scent of herbs. But as she stepped inside, she was met with an unnatural stillness. The waiting room, once a sanctuary for those seeking relief, was eerily empty. The soft lighting did little to dispel the heavy silence that hung in the air. Calling out Jon's name, her voice echoed unanswered through the clinic's narrow halls. As she moved deeper inside, her worst fears were realized. There, on the floor of his treatment room, she found Jon. Lifeless, his body still. He had been shot multiple times in the head, a brutal and senseless act that shattered the peace of the clinic forever. The shock and horror of Lilly's discovery quickly spread. Within minutes, police and investigators arrived, transforming the once tranquil clinic into a bustling crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the entrance, and the sound of radios and hurried footsteps replaced the usual calm. For the Tokuhara family, and for Waipahu, life would never be the same. As investigators combed through the scene, they made a puzzling discovery. Near Jon's body, almost in plain sight, was a paper wrapper labeled herbs. Inside, they found nearly $4,000 in cash. The money was untouched, as if deliberately left behind, raising immediate questions about the motive behind the killing. Was this a robbery gone wrong, or was there something far more personal at play? The presence of so much cash, left undisturbed, seemed to suggest that theft was not the reason Jon's life had been taken. Detectives began to consider other possibilities: jealousy, revenge, or perhaps a grudge that had festered in silence. The untouched cash became a symbol of the mystery. Why would a killer leave behind such a large sum? The answer, investigators believed, might hold the key to understanding what really happened inside those clinic walls. News of Jon's death spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the tight-knit Waipahu community. Patients, friends, and neighbors gathered outside the clinic, lighting candles and leaving flowers in his memory. Jon was more than just a healthcare provider. He was a friend, a son, and a cherished neighbor who had touched countless lives with his kindness and skill. As his family mourned, police began the painstaking process of piecing together Jon's final hours. They reviewed security footage, interviewed witnesses, and searched for any clue that might lead them to the truth. The community, still reeling from the loss, watched and waited, desperate for answers and justice. The investigation had only just begun, but it was already clear that this case would grip not just Waipahu, but all of Hawaii. News crews arrived, and the story of Jon Tokuhara's tragic death became headline news, sparking conversations about safety, trust, and the hidden darkness that can sometimes lurk behind familiar doors. The peaceful clinic, once a place of healing and hope, had become the center of a heartbreaking mystery. The echoes of loss lingered in every room, a stark reminder of the violence that had shattered so many lives. As investigators pressed forward, the search for justice had only just begun. For Jon's family, and for the entire community, finding the truth was now the only way to begin healing. As detectives dug deeper into Jon Tokuhara's life, they stumbled upon a secret that would completely alter the course of their investigation, a tangled love triangle that no one had seen coming. What initially appeared to be a straightforward case suddenly became far more complicated as hidden relationships and secret motives began to surface. Jon, a respected fertility doctor, had been having a clandestine affair with Joyce Thompson, a married woman who had come to him seeking help for infertility. Their relationship, kept hidden from the outside world, was filled with secrecy and risk. The two would meet in private, exchanging messages and stolen moments, all while Joyce's husband, Eric, remained in the dark. But in July 2021, everything changed. Eric Thompson, Joyce's husband, discovered the affair after finding incriminating messages on her phone, just 6 months before Jon's tragic murder. The shock and betrayal Eric felt were overwhelming, shattering the trust in his marriage and igniting a storm of emotions. The revelation devastated Eric, and though he and Joyce claimed to have reconciled and moved past the affair by the time of Jon's death, the emotional scars ran deep. Friends and family noticed a tension that lingered beneath the surface. hinting that forgiveness might not have come so easily. Text messages between Jon and Joyce suggested that their affair had ended months before the murder, but investigators wondered if the damage had already been done. The digital trail painted a picture of a relationship that had fizzled out, but the emotional fallout was far from over. Prosecutors, however, believed that Eric's anger and humiliation didn't simply fade away. Instead, they argued, those feelings simmered beneath the surface, fueling a powerful desire for revenge that would ultimately drive him to violence. According to the prosecution, Eric simply couldn't let go of the betrayal. The pain and humiliation gnawed at him, and eventually, he decided to take matters into his own hands, setting the stage for a crime that would shock the community. The prosecution's narrative was clear. This was a crime of passion, born from jealousy, heartbreak, and a thirst for vengeance. They painted Eric as a man pushed to the edge by his wife's infidelity, unable to contain his rage. The love triangle, Jon, Joyce, and Eric, became the central theme in the case against Eric Thompson. It was a story of love, betrayal, and ultimately, tragedy, that captivated everyone following the trial. With this revelation, the investigation now had a powerful motive, one that would shape the entire case and leave a lasting impact on all those involved. With motive established, investigators began the painstaking process of piecing together the events leading up to Jon Tokuhara's murder. Every detail mattered, and the team knew that even the smallest clue could be the key to solving the case. They pored over witness statements, phone records, and surveillance footage, determined to find a connection between the evidence and a suspect. Their focus quickly turned to Eric Thompson, a man whose name kept surfacing in interviews and background checks. Detectives meticulously reviewed case files, mapping out timelines and cross-referencing alibis, searching for inconsistencies that could point to the killer. A breakthrough came when surveillance footage from a camera near Jon's clinic captured a white Chevrolet Silverado arriving on the day of the murder. The vehicle's presence at the scene was a crucial lead, and investigators knew they had to track down every possible owner. The footage also showed a man entering the clinic for just 45 seconds, the exact window in which Jon was killed. The brevity of the visit suggested a targeted attack, not a random act. Police identified 53 owners of similar white pickup trucks on Oahu. They methodically checked each alibi, interviewing owners and verifying their whereabouts, determined to leave no stone unturned. Only Eric Thompson couldn't account for his whereabouts at the time of the murder. As other suspects were eliminated, the focus of the investigation shifted squarely onto him. At the crime scene, investigators discovered a hat that didn't belong to Jon. It was carefully collected and sent to the lab for DNA analysis, offering a potential link to the killer. The DNA results were telling. Eric Thompson could not be excluded as a contributor. While the match wasn't definitive, it placed him at the scene and raised even more suspicion. Investigators knew that while the DNA evidence wasn't a perfect match, it was a significant link in the chain, strengthening the case against Thompson. Armed with surveillance footage, a lack of alibi, and the DNA evidence, police obtained a warrant and searched Thompson's home, hoping to uncover more proof tying him to the crime. Inside, they found a dozen firearms, confirming that Thompson had access to weapons, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. On February 1, 2022, after weeks of relentless investigation, Eric Thompson was arrested and charged with Jon Tokuhara's murder. The community watched as the case unfolded, shocked by the developments. But for detectives and prosecutors, the legal battle was just beginning. The search for justice would now move from the streets to the courtroom, where every piece of evidence would be put to the test. The prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence, but together, it formed a compelling story. Surveillance footage placed a matching truck at the scene, and Thompson was the only owner without an alibi. The hat left at the clinic contained DNA that didn't exclude Thompson. Motive was clear: jealousy and revenge over the affair. Firearms found at his home showed he had the means. The prosecution argued these threads, woven together, pointed to Eric Thompson. The jury would have to decide if it was enough. In August 2023, Eric Thompson stood trial for Jon Tokuhara's murder. The prosecution presented their evidence: the truck, the DNA, and the motive of a husband scorned. The defense countered, calling the case circumstantial and accusing police of tunnel vision. They argued Jon had other enemies, pointing to his gambling and other affairs. Two men whose partners had also been involved with Jon testified, but denied involvement. The defense emphasized the lack of a murder weapon, a confession, or a definitive DNA match. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated, but couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. The judge declared a mistrial. For both families, the wait for justice continued. The case was far from over. The mistrial was a setback, but not the end. Jon Tokuhara's family faced renewed pain, while Eric Thompson remained under suspicion. The prosecution quickly announced plans for a retrial, determined to secure a conviction. Both sides re-evaluated their strategies, aiming to close gaps and strengthen their cases. The defense planned to double down on creating doubt, while prosecutors refined their narrative. As the second trial approached in early 2025, tension mounted. Another courtroom showdown was inevitable. In February 2025, Eric Thompson faced a new jury on the same charges. The prosecution presented their case with renewed focus: the truck, the DNA, the love triangle, and the motive for revenge. The defense again argued reasonable doubt, pointing to other possible suspects and the lack of direct evidence. This time, the jury was convinced. After deliberation, they found Eric Thompson guilty of second-degree murder and the firearm charge. Relief and vindication washed over Jon Tokuhara's family. For Eric Thompson, it was the end of his freedom. On June 27, 2025, Eric Thompson was sentenced. The courtroom was heavy with emotion as Jon Tokuhara's family delivered powerful victim impact statements. Lilly Tokuhara spoke of the pain and void left by her son's murder. The judge imposed a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 15 years, plus a concurrent 20-year firearm sentence. Thompson's wife, Joyce, was present, witnessing the final chapter of a tragedy that began with her affair. Thompson's defense team announced plans to appeal, maintaining his innocence. As he was led away, the reality of the verdict set in. For Jon's family, it was closure. For Thompson's, a new kind of loss. The courtroom drama was over, but the consequences would last for years. Justice at last had been served. As of October 2025, Eric Thompson is incarcerated at Halawa Correctional Facility on Oahu. He faces a mandatory minimum of 15 years before parole is even considered. His legal team is preparing an appeal, but his future remains uncertain. For the Tokuhara family, the conviction brought justice, but not healing. The community was left shaken, forced to confront the hidden turmoil behind ordinary lives. Joyce Thompson now faces life without her husband, the affair's consequences echoing on. The case is a somber reminder of how jealousy and betrayal can destroy lives. In the end, there were no winners, only victims, and a community forever changed.